The PS in the Labor and Skills Development Ministry is here with us this morning. Geoffrey Kaituko, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
No pressure. We're already told that you're the top earner of the country. Your area, top earner for the country at now. Mm-hmm. So no pressure. We're going to ask you how you've done that and how you intend to.
I said no pressure 3 times.
Yeah, I'm just
pressure in itself.
laying ground for that. So as you get comfortable, CT always welcomes everybody with a proverb.
Yes. Proverbs for the whole of this week have come from a country that is well known for many things. Its wildlife, for its athletes, for its delightful beaches, and for its resilient and very, very, very industrious people.
Oh.
Do you have an idea which country that is?
Of course, Kenya.
Spoken like a true Kenyan.
Yes.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week have been from Kenya and still are. At harvest, you know how good the millet is.
At harvest, you know how good the millet is.
Yes.
One PS, what do you make of that?
My understanding, first and foremost, let me thank the wise man, because Proverbs are from wise people.
Indeed.
For sharing with us that proverb. But my understanding of it is that you can only know how good something is when you see the results. Yes, that's my understanding of it.
But you have to wait, eh?
You have to wait.
You have to wait.
Yes.
Results usually take a bit of time, don't they?
Yeah, that's certainly.
Yeah. Results take some time. If we jump into it, again, we're looking at the area under which you serve as permanent secretary, already being seen as the top earner in the country. That didn't take a lot of time, and according to what we're being told, we're already seeing the results. You don't have to wait for it like they do for the ear of millet. But we're already seeing that, and we're very interested in how that has come about. And when we talk about this area being the top earner, what exactly does that mean? So walk us through the journey over the last 1 year. What has happened when we're talking about labor migration, when we're talking about unemployment in the country, when we're talking about looking for jobs outside the country for Kenyans? Give us an overview of what your department has handled in the last 12 months.
Thank you very much. And I think this is a very important conversation, given the importance of what we're discussing about. What I would say is that the labor migration phenomenon is not really something that has been brought about by government. There are global forces which drive this phenomenon. The Kenyan people, for a long time, have been moving to other parts of the world, particularly in search of educational opportunities, not necessarily for jobs. So for many years, our diaspora consisted of Kenyans who went to the US, to the UK, and to other countries to study. And they remained behind to pursue higher education opportunities, and some of them chose to settle down in those countries. And this came about in the 90s and later when the economy wasn't doing well. But then what happened recently? And then the other dynamics came in, like globalization, technology, demographics, particularly in the West, because in the West there is a phenomenon of aging population and low birth rates. So for that reason, or rather for those reasons, we now had a situation where many Kenyans preferred going to those countries, or those who are already there just to remain behind to get a decent living or to make a decent living. Now, last year, based on the numbers that were shared by the Central Bank of Kenya, diaspora remittances overtook coffee,
Yeah.
tea, and tourism, which for a long time were our top foreign exchange earners. You know, when Kenyans in the diaspora send money back home, they do that in the form of either dollars or British pound or euros. And then back home here, it's converted into Kenya shillings. And so last year, I think we earned about $500 million. 500, rather not $500 billion, 500 billion.
Billion, yes.
Yeah. Dollars. And then we now want to take that to a trillion. Now, the Kenya Kwanza administration, out of realization of the importance of this particular sector, decided to take charge of this space. Labor migration that government controlled was the one for Kenyans who are going to the Middle East. That is our traditional market.
Yeah.
That is the Gulf countries. And mainly the people who are going there were domestic workers. And when we came into office, there were a lot of problems in a number of countries where Kenyans who either worked as domestic workers or who had gone there before to work underwent some form of abuse. Some even died. And so there was an urgent need to regulate that space. So in the last 9 months, what the administration has basically done is, one, to strengthen the regulatory framework.
Okay.
We've come up with a policy, which is now before Parliament. It is called Sessional Paper Number 5 of 2023. And I think the Labour Committee is currently conducting public participation. Secondly, there is a bill which has been drafted, and it is now undergoing public participation. It's not yet gone to Cabinet for approval and thereafter transmission to Parliament. The whole purpose of doing the bill is so that we strengthen the governance of labor migration. Remember, the laws that we are using currently are the 5 labor laws of 2007. And you all know that since 2007, a lot has happened.
Indeed.
A new constitution in Kenya, which these laws haven't been aligned to. And then also there are global forces that I mentioned earlier on that have somehow driven this phenomenon. So then you have private recruitment agents who actually do the scoping and the recruitment. And in many instances, we dealt with fake agents who actually were involved in human trafficking. And so Kenya today, as we speak, is considered to be in the red zone because it's been a source, a transit point, and a destination of human beings who are trafficked.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to manage this situation as a government so that we don't promote human trafficking in the name of labor export. We want labor export to be purely labor export while curbing or combating human trafficking at the same time.
Can I jump in and ask?
Yes, please.
On this point here, I'm interested to know what the policy framework then is going to provide. I mean, even as we continue to look at an overview of what the ministry and specifically this labor mechanism is coming in to achieve. Because if we give a background to what has really been happening with the export of labor from Kenya, is that, as you've alluded to, the situation has been at best terrible, right? Over the years, like you said, people come back dead. People go heavily mistreated. And there have been calls to have this regularized. There have been calls to make sure that there is a framework set up so that at any one time, a Kenyan leaving Kenya to go work, let's use the Middle East, obviously, as a point, because that is what has been happening, specifically countries like Saudi Arabia and the like, that at any one time, the government is aware that there's X number of Kenyans who are working here, and these are the places where they are working, so that an extension of protection then is provided for them, number one, and there is knowledge of your home country in terms of what is happening. I'm curious as to whether this new policy takes all of those things into consideration as it is before Parliament.
Precisely. What has happened is in January we took a trip to Riyadh. We met our counterparts in the Ministry of Labour there. And there's something that struck me during that trip. I realized that 90% of the problems that we were dealing with there originated back home, here in Nairobi and Mombasa in particular. And so we needed to clean up that particular space. But we could not do that when first the government itself was not well coordinated. Labor migration is carried out by different departments of government. There's foreign, diaspora, labor, immigration, then security. We met the Filipinos, the Philippines ambassador, and he shared with us a very profound concept that they have what is called one country team approach, where for every one Filipino you see walking, there is a whole government behind him, or there's security, there's labor, there's immigration, there's defense. All these people are facilitating their citizen who is abroad. And you know, Filipinos were 700,000. Kenyans were only 120 officially.
In the Middle East?
No, in Saudi at that time.
Arabia.
But there is a black market, and so those in the in the shadows of society, we actually don't have any numbers from that group. So then, what we factored is, one, to strengthen the coordination within government, so that labor, foreign, immigration, and also security and defense are coordinating the recruitment of Kenyans, and also protecting them when they go to the Middle East in particular, because the Middle East is where protections are needed, and Eastern Europe. Let me flag those areas. Western Europe and North America, well, to some extent, we don't have this kind of cases.
Okay.
There are not very many. So what the policy has done is we have factored in the issue of pre-departure training for those who are going to those countries. We have also insisted that the agencies must undergo mandatory vetting. Initially, when you applied to be a private recruitment agent, all you needed to do was to pay a fee, file the necessary documents, and that is it.
Yeah.
But today, the directors of those particular agencies are required to appear before a multi-agency committee of government to explain a few things, including their finances. We had a case recently, for example, of a very young person, 21, who wanted to be a recruiter. So, and this was a conduit. And also we have cases of foreigners. We don't outlaw foreigners from doing that business. Yes. But there's a way in which they need to do it. So currently, therefore, we have ensured that this particular recruiters appear before the committee. And out of that exercise, I will tell you, their numbers have come down. When we came in, there were 900 of them. Today, there are 400. If you want to verify this, you can go to the NEA website. Because many of them could not meet the requirements. Okay. Yes. And this all is meant to ensure that we have safe, orderly, and regular migration of Kenyans to the Middle East and other countries. Because if we get it right with the agencies, then it will be, and also with pre-departure training, it will be easy for them to then recruit people in an ethical manner.
You said there were some issues that you interacted with when you were in Saudi, and that you came to the realization that those issues emanated from Kenya. Can you talk about what those issues were?
Well, I'll tell you what I saw, City. We visited a place called the Sakan. This is where girls who live different houses, who run away. The problem in Saudi, is that there are many Kenyans who go there. They were recruited, one by an agent who is not registered and licensed. And then when they are taken there, they realize that they were duped. So they start looking for a better employer. And then there again, you have another group of brokers. They are called the dalalas. So the dalalas are actually the ones running the black market. And there are Kenyans like you and me. They speak Swahili or English and or Tolu or Kikuyu. And so, or Luya. So they trap these ladies when they get there. And a lot of these young girls, when I saw them in the Sakan, I didn't understand why we allowed them to go there, because many of them were either illiterate or too young. I confronted some of my officers, the female officers who went with me. I said, "Madam, will you employ this girl in Nairobi?" And all of them said no. If you can't employ her in Nairobi, why would you
Export her.
Why would you allow that to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I thought then we needed to tighten things here so that only mature and qualified persons are taken to those countries.
So are we seeing that there is actually a tightening? Because, if we talk about, there's the policy, there's what can be done before Parliament, and there's what you saw as the reality.
Yes.
And then there's also the reality that happens at an airport that is right here. That there are individuals who are escorting these young girls on flights that leave at 2 a.m, and they're leaving in droves. The escort happens to the door of the airport, and then they turn back and they leave, never looking back. They don't know where these girls are going. They don't know where they're going to end up. They just know that they have gone. So the question is, have the screws actually been tightened right at the point of departure here, to insist that as they leave, that can an immigration official at the airport actually ask the question, where are you going? To whom are you going to report? What's your job? Should you have all of that documented information before you leave Kenya? Can an immigration official then at this point today make that request? And if the information is not given, then denial then becomes the next thing. Denial of travel then happens.
That is a very, very important point you make. That in fact has been our problem because of one, non-adherence to the laid down procedure by the agents, and then number two is the collusion by law enforcement, including immigration officers. We have had a number of conversations with our colleagues in immigration, and this is why I say that part of our problem was weak and uncoordinated labor migration, because we wanted to be on the same page so that only those migrant workers who have been processed through our system as Ministry of Labor, attested by Foreign Affairs, are allowed to exit this country. Recently, and you saw the case of Lebanon, because now we are dealing very well with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Now there's another route called Lebanon. And Lebanon technically is considered to be a country at war. And the agents have been taking people. So we've written to immigration. Personally, there is that letter, which I did. And then the police. And we requested them to stop any Kenyan migrant worker from going to Lebanon. However, the keyword to this is something that we are proposing at the moment, that for you to go out, there should be a document.
Yes.
It may be an electronic in the form of a barcode, or it may be a card, for example. That will be in your documents, which you have to give to the immigration officer. Secondly, we have also requested for a special desk at JKIA and also Moi International Airport in Mombasa, where those migrant workers can be processed. This is the case in the Philippines. The Philippines is actually considered to be the highest standard in terms of labor migration, to be the one that sets the standards there in that area.
Yeah.
So then, if we get that, if we get an identification, and then immigration officers buy into that, then we'll be able to crack down on this problem together with the police. Yeah.
You know, every time we have a guest in the studio, we normally ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves. Now, apart from being or having or sitting in the docket you currently sit, you've had a stab at politics, but even before having a stab at politics, you've been someone who's been very, very actively involved in social matters within the communities that you come from. But to put some very delightful icing on it, you actually wrote a book. Now, when someone writes a book, that book tells you more about the person than anything else. Tell us about this book, Getting Things Done, A Key to Exemplary Leadership. What made you think of writing this book? How did it come about?
Thank you very much, Siti. This book came about as a result of a challenge that I was given in 2019 when I went back to my alma mater in the US, that is Western Michigan University. I was receiving an award. At that time, I was serving as an advisor to the then Deputy President. And previously, as you mentioned, I had worked for a long time in my home county of Turkana, managing programs, projects, and then finally getting elected as the first speaker between 2013 and 2017. Therefore, that afforded me the opportunity to pioneer the evolution. So this university decided to honor me with this award, which for many years when I was a student there, I never saw many Africans receiving it. So when I went for the ceremony, I was asked to do a speech. And in the course of that speech, one of the professors asked me, now, Geoffrey, you seem to have done very well as a leader, as a person. What are you doing to help other people, especially younger people, to rise, to be either leaders or to succeed in their own right? So I gave a response that, I am in mentorship, I have done this and that. But that triggered something at the back of my mind. So when I came back home, I kept asking people, what do you think that is? How can I be more impactful to particularly younger people and other Kenyans, other Africans, and humanity in general? And so I met a friend who is British but from Uganda. And he told me, Geoffrey, at your age, you can even write 3 books. Your story should be read. So I asked him, how do I do it? And told me it's very easy, let's do it. So this became a project during COVID because there wasn't much work to do. So I started writing just to put down my story, the lessons I've learned in the course of life, and also as a leader, both at the county level and then at the national level. So basically, this is a life story. It's a life book. I'll also consider it a leadership book because I've shared leadership lessons, what I learned during the evolution, leading the MCS. When I came in, you people talked of pressure. There's no pressure you can face in this country like that of being a speaker of MCS.
And why is that?
Because you can be impeached very easily. When we got in city,
Your bosses.
they are your bosses. They elected you, but the threshold is very high. In between 2013 and 2015, they impeached about 6 speakers, and most of them are individuals who had served as advocates of the High Court of Kenya.
Starting with us from Kiambu.
Yes, that
It was the first one.
and the reason being, when you sit, I've narrated those stories here. When you sit there, this is not a court of law. When you're presiding, this is a political court. So essentially, I had to put down this, just one, to inspire, educate, and also share experiences. I realized when I was an advisor, there was no reading material because the advisory practice for presidents, prime ministers is a recent phenomenon in Africa.
Right.
So I thought, let me put in what I think about it now that I had the opportunity to serve for 4 years as an advisor at the presidential level.
Yes.
Yes.
So even as you speak about getting things done, and we're looking at the Ministry of Labour here.
Yes.
And again, looking at you being this ministry being called the top earner of the year. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about because of diaspora remittances, and that's why we see that a lot of money coming in essentially through Kenyans who are abroad working comes back into the country, or are we looking at other things? And if we segue to some of the other matters that we talk about, we heard the president just a couple of days ago talking about, creating jobs for Kenyans to go work outside of the country. You've had many talks with representatives from different countries over the last couple of months, Austria, Belgium, and Germany, looking at opportunities for Kenyans. Does that all make up to this ministry then being the top earner? And then what are the plans going forward?
That is correct. You are spot on. And, I'm inspired by, I think, your home country where you originally came from. What they get is 2.6 trillion. They are number one when it comes to diaspora remittances, because you have a big diaspora.
Right.
Now, what is happening is that there is demand for our labor. Labor, just like any other economic factor, is governed by forces of demand and supply. So most of those Western countries are beginning to experience labor shortages. They no longer have the kind of workforce that is capable of sustaining their developed economies. So they are looking up to developing countries and like Kenya and others, where we have a surplus, particularly of skilled labor, or people who are highly educated, highly skilled, but have no jobs. So our dilemma as a government is, what do? Do you let this person waste away here at home, or you have the opportunity and the option of facilitating this person to go to another country and be more productive? So remittances is just part of that, but also getting employment opportunities. Today in Kenya, one of the top issues is unemployment. And for a long time, we paid lip service as society, as leaders, to unemployment. But now this is a reality we can no longer run away from. As Kenyan people or Africans here, we have to find a solution to unemployment. We have, in a way, we have to do something about it. And so labor migration is one of the strategies we think will be able to assist us in denting that particular problem, in reducing unemployment. Our unemployment is fundamentally a youth bulge.
Yes.
It is different in other countries. But then you have Kenyans here who are trained in hospitality. There are Kenyans who are very good in ICT. There are Kenyans who have other skills. And so we will want those Kenyans, since they are not anyway employed here at home, we'll want them to have opportunities in other countries. When they come back also, there will be skills and technology transfer. It's not just about money only. But then that is why we need to have a robust return and reintegration program, so that when you come back home, you don't just come back and you waste away again. We come back, you get a place where you can be socialized into the community or into the country, and then you get to use your skills that you acquired in another country. We also noted that within Africa, our Kenyan professionals have a niche. Whether you're talking of Southern Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, you find that Kenyans are well regarded. They serve as teachers, lecturers. They are in hospitality industry across the continent, and they are well respected. And so we will want them to encourage them also to pursue those opportunities, those who can.
Now,
yes.
It would sound as though then Kenyans essentially who would not be able to find a job here then are being primed for the international market. Does the Ministry of Labour, and then looking at where you're speaking of labour migration, then again prime those who are going through school to be accepted in a local market? So sure, there is the external option, but then it doesn't take away from the problem that is here that causes such a huge bulge when it looks at unemployment. So for looking at solving the unemployment issue here in Kenya, that obviously there is more demand than there is supply when it comes to work and viable work as such. So yes, there's the external option for having people, go out, get jobs. We know also that you can be remote but work, somewhere else through digital platforms. But still doesn't take away the fact that there is a problem here, that there's more on one side than there are on the other side. So what would you say is being done to actually solve that problem? Does the ministry get involved at the education sector, where we're saying, you know what, let's not churn out so much of this because we don't have a ready to take, we don't have enough in terms of uptake when they come out on the other side of graduation? What's being done to actually look at that unemployment problem and reduce the percentage?
Yeah, that is very important, because I've also met Kenyans who tell me, Bwana PS, we don't want to go out. We want to remain here at home and make our contribution here. Yes, you can remain here at home if you have the skills that are needed by our local market here. So, and this is now why we need to look at the issue of skills mismatch, because sometimes I think we overtrain in certain areas and then undertrain in others. Or we train individuals in certain disciplines, and then we are told that these people don't have the kind of skills that are needed. So then this is why we have the skills development component now in our ministry, because of the realization of the fact that skills development in particular is the currency of the modern labor market. So we are having a conversation with the Minister of Education. There is a whole state department for TVET. There is another state department for higher education and also basic education. So we have to adopt a holistic approach where we have to prepare the Kenyan child from the beginning to the end. I recently visited South Korea and I saw how even children were being prepared, how they're being exposed. They have centers, and then schools bring them there, then young people, then middle-aged people, women, different demographic groups. And so here in Kenya, we want to adopt that approach of making young people experience what does it mean to be a doctor, to be an engineer, to be a firefighter, to be a soldier, for example. But we can't do this as labor alone. We must engage with education.
Right.
Exactly.
Because they are the source of labor. Yeah, that is what I normally say. The Minister of Education is the source of labor. The Minister of Health is the source of labor. All the institutions and all the other training bodies, including the NYS. And so the issue of skills matching is important, but that has to be done. The training is to be done by the Minister of Education and the institutions they accredit. Our work as labor is therefore to ensure that this particular trainees or graduates have access to the market and have the kind of skills that are needed by the market. And so in preparing them also, we are now engaging with private sector. We want to expand the internship program, the apprenticeship program, which is under the Ministry of Labor, so that we expose our young graduates to different kind of environments, work environments. Yes.
Of recent, we have seen the president going out there and speaking with nations like Germany that we want to provide labor, especially those are coming out of TVET training and what have you. Now that we have already seen Saudi Arabia and other countries speaking of opportunities that Kenyans can go, what is the fast tracking of making sure that our laws are, one, conversant with our constitution, and they are also conversant with the international labor laws, so that if today we export engineers to Germany to work on those car companies, what is the plan? Because it is right now, the laws that we are using, we have said they are not in concurrent with what the constitution says, and maybe at times in contravention with some international labor laws. What are we doing to ensure this mass exodus, we want to officially now take Kenyans out there. The laws, are we going to protect these Kenyans that we want to export as a government? Leave alone those private arrangements that people do. But here we are now talking government to government agreements. What are we doing to ensure that the Kenyans that may get those opportunities are protected, as well as government being protected by individuals who go there, so that they also don't misrepresent the name of our government?
Yes, that's very good. It's good you've asked that. What we've done is we have sent out bilateral labor agreements, which are frameworks for engagement with other governments. And we are about to enter into negotiations. We've sent out 19 of them to different countries, Germany being one, the other one is Austria. The UK, we have a standing BLA, bilateral labor agreement with the UK, signed in 2021 for the supply of 20,000 nurses. But also the UK has other opportunities. And then we want to improve the existing frameworks in the Middle East. And so bilateral labor agreements are the tool, or rather will be what will govern our government-to-government engagement in this arrangement of exporting migrant workers. Because according to ILO, and also in terms of the experience, countries like Philippines, like India, that have BLS with other nations, their citizens, one, are given preferential treatment when it comes to job opportunities by those other countries. Number two is they are afforded protections by the other government, because this is now a formal arrangement. But also the other arrangement is government to business, where we as the government of Kenya can contract an MOU with a big company like Microsoft, Google, that's so that we request them to provide opportunities to Kenyans. So that's called government to business. The first one is government to government.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's private government, there is business to business, which is a private sector kind of arrangement. For example, our Chamber of Commerce here in Nairobi, or rather in Kenya, and a sister chapter in another country, you get into it. And, chamber is very important in these things that we are talking about.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, these are frameworks. If we implement them after negotiating and monitor them properly, we should be able to secure opportunities for our citizens, and also we should be able to protect them, because we'll have a guarantee from the other government that we have negotiated with, of them taking care of our citizens. Yes.
Nice.
Okay. Even as we talk about, the streamlining of processes that has happened specifically between Kenya and Saudi Arabia, today there still are some issues in terms of people who've gone to work, and under certain circumstances things have happened. So one of three things happens: they go missing, they are ill, and they have no recourse in terms of treatment to then be able to leave that particular employment and come back to Kenya, or unfortunately they pass on for under whatever circumstances. There've been several. What is the preparation by government today to be able to deal with such a sticky situation in the event that somebody is missing? Can a Kenyan in Kenya come to the Ministry of Labour, using also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? How would a negotiation, or how would an intervention work, whereby I come and I say, my person is ill, I cannot get in touch with them, or my person is missing, I cannot find them? What interventions are in place from the ministry level to start to deal with those matters? Because we do have them, and as long as earth is earth, there will be more. How does that happen now in a streamlined manner?
Yes, thank you very much. In the last 9 months, after we visited Saudi Arabia, we were able to put in place a bilateral mechanism between us and the Saudis, and it's been working very well. And I chair that on behalf of Kenya, that team. There is a deputy minister who chairs on behalf of the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development of Saudi Arabia. And initially when we started, there were bi-weekly meetings. Now there are monthly meetings. Then we were handling too much. And therefore, a lot of those matters that you've mentioned were things that we dealt with and we still deal with. When this is brought to our attention by a family member, by an elected representative, what we do is we engage first through National Employment Authority. We get to know who was the agent who took this person to that country. The agents are bonded. One day, they're expected to facilitate the return of a migrant worker.
Okay.
So, and there is money they pay for that to happen. And then, so we trace the employer on the other side through the agent. Secondly, we also use the Ministry of Human Resource and Social Development. That is the Ministry of Labor in that country. And that's and Qatar also, there are a few issues. And so, but let me speak of Saudi. So through that mechanism, we are able to assist our Kenyans. Then there is the Diaspora State Department, which was created by the president to attend to the welfare of Kenyans. So where we do not have the Ministry of Labor officials, like a labor attaché. In Saudi, we have a labor attaché. In Qatar, we have a labor attaché. UAE, we have a labor attaché. Where we have labor attachés, our labor attachés will follow up the cases. Where we don't have labor attachés, the officials from the Diaspora State Department are the ones who we give the information, and it is them who now help with the evacuation or will help with with the Kenyans. If it is one, it is a group. Sometimes it can be a group of 5 Kenyans trapped in another corner of the world.
Right.
Currently, we are dealing with a live issue in Malaysia, okay, of Kenyans who went there and got stuck. So the State Department for Diaspora Affairs, together with Labor, is assisting, and together with Foreign, in bringing back those Kenyans.
Okay.
Yes. So there is a whole government now approach towards assisting Kenyans when we get those cases, either from family members or from members of parliament. We have been able to repatriate a number of bodies of Kenyans who die. Some of them die of natural causes.
Sure.
There are those who, of course, who die of abuse, and we have asked our counterparts to help us in pursuing the culprits. What I'll tell you is, I think we had abandoned our people for a long time. When you abandon your citizens, there's nothing that stops an employer from abusing them. But when they know that the government is behind these people, they shy away. So a lot of those cases are reducing because now there is this engagement.
Sure. So can employers, So can people come to people who are in Kenya today, who have relatives who are outside the country, still using Saudi Arabia as an example, where do they go? Do they come to the ministry? Is there a reporting center? Who do they go to speak to? Do they go to the office and ask for whomever they can find on the day? Is there a centralized reporting area where people can come to and say, this is my issue, who can deal with it here before, those bilateral conversations begin? Yes, there was. Initially, we used to refer them to NEA, National Employment Authority, because it is National Employment Authority that is in charge of private recruitment agents, and we still use them to track. But now the president established the Labor Migration Management Department within the ministry, and we have set up a one-stop shop in the Ministry of Labor at the NSSF building. Okay. So anybody who has an issue now can come to NSSF, Block C, 7th floor, and report the matter there. The officers seconded to that one-stop shop to deal with those cases. When they bring to my attention, I fast-track it with our ambassador in that country, because we are in contact with them. I also talk to my colleagues in Foreign, and so we are able to get real-time support to our citizens who are stuck, in difficult situations. Another something that is coming up in the bill, which is going to help us, is the Migrant Workers Welfare Fund. Okay. And I'll be happy if we can speak briefly to that, because I think lately it's taken a lot of flack. From where I sit, I think people haven't read
what this fund is proposed to do. Because we want it to be this fund, once it is enacted, the bill is enacted into law, the fund will come into being. That fund, in our view, is going to be a safety net in terms of making Kenyans who don't have insurance to access medical support, those who don't have air tickets to be able to procure tickets for them. So that we don't have a situation like the one that we have now, where we are solely reliant on an agent, and when an agent decides to hide or to escape, we are left with a difficult situation. Yes.
Let's open up the details of that fund right after we come in after the top of the hour, because we're getting into it just now. We're coming close to 8 o'clock. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour is our guest, and we continue with these conversations. So there's a fund. It's a welfare fund. There are questions about it. Let's look into it when we come back.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.